what on earth was going on.
It's on the news, in headlines, on every major network across America. But no one can explain it. No one can agree on what it means. Across the United States, people are looking up and capturing the same mysterious sight. Glowing spheres drifting through the night sky. Changing direction as if guided by intelligence. In one clip, the light plummets toward the horizon, only to shoot back upward in a flash. In another, a formation of bright orbs hovers silently, then vanishes as if swallowed by the clouds. Reporters call them UAPs. Scientists call them plasma events. But witnesses describe something else entirely, a presence. And it isn't just America. From South America to the Middle East, from the frozen north of Scandinavia to the deserts of Egypt, strange lights have appeared above cities, deserts, and oceans. Some say they've heard low, trumpet-like sounds echoing from the skies. Others report rivers turning red and swarms of locusts darkening the horizon. It's as if the natural world itself is reacting, trembling, to something unseen. These events are not isolated. They are multiplying, and with each passing month, they grow harder to dismiss. The question is no longer, are they real? Even the news anchors admit they are. The real question is, what are we witnessing? Because while governments debate radar data and weather models, those who read the ancient prophecies recognize a familiar pattern. There will be signs in the heavens above and on the earth below. What if the sky isn't warning us of invaders, but of something far greater? Something written long before satellites, before science. A message that the heavens themselves would one day deliver. As lights appear and waters turn crimson, a silent question echoes across the earth. Are these coincidences? Or is heaven trying to speak? The mysterious lights above. What began as a few isolated sightings has now become a national conversation. From New York to California, from the quiet suburbs of Minnesota to the coastal skies of Florida. Americans are witnessing something that defies explanation. On a calm evening, a family in Massachusetts films what they think is a meteor, until it suddenly stops mid-air, glows brighter, and darts away against the wind. In Minnesota, a father and son scanning the night for meteor showers see a white orb surrounded by a faint halo, as if a light is wrapped inside a living cloud. And along the Florida coast, fishermen describe glowing objects rising from the ocean, moving silently through the sky, then diving back beneath the water's surface. These are not stories from anonymous internet forums. They're verified reports featured on Fox News, Newsweek, and the New York Post. Pilots have filed flight logs describing intelligent motion that radar cannot track. Some military analysts claim it could be new surveillance technology. Others whisper about something entirely different, something that watches back. Even the Pentagon's UAP task force, after years of silence, admits that over 100 encounters remain unexplained. The data shows physical craft, not illusions. They appear, vanish, and accelerate beyond anything known to human technology. Scientists offer their theories. Maybe it's atmospheric plasma, electrical discharges trapped between magnetic fields. Maybe it's experimental aircraft. Maybe it's just weather. But none of these explanations account for the patterns, the timing, the precision. Whatever these objects are, they don't behave like accidents of nature. And perhaps that's the point. Because while the world races to define them, Scripture has already described such moments, times when heaven and earth intersect. The prophet Ezekiel spoke of a whirlwind coming out of the north and a great cloud with fire flashing continually. With creatures that moved wherever the Spirit would go, Ezekiel 1:4-12. To ancient eyes, it was a vision of glory. To modern cameras, it looks like light, spinning, intelligent, unearthly. So the question isn't only what we're seeing, but why now? Each generation has watched the skies, from the Star of Bethlehem to the comets of the Middle Ages. Yet what makes this moment different is the frequency and the timing. At a point in history when moral lines blur, wars ignite, and the earth itself groans under pressure, the heavens begin to stir. Astronomers track the patterns, but theologians see something deeper. A spiritual tension, as if two realms are drawing closer. The Bible calls them the heavens, plural, hinting that reality is layered, not flat. Paul wrote in Ephesians 6:12, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and powers of the air." That phrase, powers of the air, takes on a haunting clarity when the sky itself begins to move. Is it possible that what we call unidentified are not visitors from another planet, but messengers or warnings from another dimension entirely? Could these lights be signs of the spiritual conflict Scripture has spoken of for millennia? Notice how every report carries the same undertone: silence, awe, a presence that unsettles the soul. Even those who don't believe in God confess they felt something, a strange mix of wonder and dread, as if creation itself was revealing a truth we've long ignored. Because sometimes heaven doesn't speak in words. It speaks in fire, it speaks in movement, it speaks in silence. And as these lights sweep across the world, from the coasts of America to the deserts of Israel, the same thought echoes: this isn't just science. It feels like prophecy. Governments will analyze, scientists will debate, and skeptics will mock. But the pattern remains. Every few weeks, new footage emerges. Every few weeks, another eyewitness looks up and can no longer deny what they see. Something, or someone, is allowing the veil to thin. And the skies, once quiet, now tremble with a message older than civilization itself. As one reporter in disbelief murmured while the camera kept rolling, "It's almost like the sky knows what it's doing." Maybe it does. Because perhaps these are not the days when heaven hides its face, but the days when it begins to reveal it. And if the sky itself is no longer silent, what might the earth say next? If the heavens are stirring, the earth is answering. From the waters of Israel to the deserts of Africa, creation itself seems to be echoing something ancient, a pattern that has unfolded before. In recent months, fishermen along the shores of the Sea of Galilee noticed something impossible to ignore. The water had turned a deep, blood-red hue. Scientists quickly pointed to a natural cause, a sudden bloom of red algae. They said it was harmless, temporary, nothing to fear. But for those who know the Scriptures, the image felt hauntingly familiar. Because once, long ago, in the land of Egypt, the river also turned to blood. Exodus 7:20 records, "Moses lifted the staff, and all the waters of the river were turned to blood." It was not just judgment, it was a message, a warning that the natural order was trembling before the divine. So, could this transformation in Galilee, the very sea where Jesus once walked, be symbolic of something greater? Scientists see biology. Believers see prophecy. Two worlds observing the same water, but through different eyes. And it isn't the only disturbance. Across vast stretches of Africa and the Middle East, Farmers wake to skies darkened by billions of locusts. They swarm like living storms, devouring everything in their path. Meteorologists blame heavy rains, perfect breeding conditions, a climate anomaly, they say. Yet the book of Joel calls it something else entirely. A nation has invaded my land, powerful and beyond number. Before them, the land is like Eden. Behind them, a desolate wilderness. In ancient prophecy, locusts were not mere insects. They were instruments, agents of warning, a mirror reflecting the spiritual decay of a people who had forgotten their Creator. Now, centuries later, the same pattern unfolds again, as if nature remembers what humanity has chosen to forget. But perhaps the most unsettling signs are not seen, but heard. From Jerusalem to distant cities across the globe, countless videos have captured deep metallic sounds reverberating through the sky. They are not thunder, not aircraft. They come without lightning, without wind, an invisible trumpet echoing from the clouds. Those who hear it describe a vibration that seems to shake not only the air, but the soul. Acousticians suggest it could be sky quakes, pressure waves trapped in the upper atmosphere, or the resonance of shifting magnetic fields. But once again, the pattern matches prophecy. Revelation 8 speaks of 7 trumpets that would sound before the end of the age, each heralding a new stage in humanity's reckoning. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Maybe what we're hearing isn't the literal trumpet of heaven, not yet, but an echo, a prelude, a reminder, because the Bible says creation itself groans in travail, waiting for redemption. Romans 8:22. So what if these sounds, this trembling of the atmosphere, are creation's cry? Think of it. The sea turns red, the air hums like a warning bell, the earth moves beneath our feet. These are not random catastrophes scattered across continents. They form a melody, a harmony between heaven and earth, a chorus of signs. And when we view them together, lights in the sky, rivers turning crimson, swarms blotting out the sun, and trumpets echoing from the clouds, a picture begins to emerge. It's as though every element of creation, wind, water, fire, and sky, has taken its place in a divine orchestra, each one playing its part in the approaching crescendo. Scientists observe data, prophets discern meaning, and somewhere between those two perspectives lies the truth. We've spent centuries believing the physical and the spiritual are separate worlds. But what if the veil between them is thinning? What if these natural anomalies are not just meteorology or biology, but the language of God, spoken through His creation one final time? For in Luke 19:40, Jesus said, "If they keep silent, the very stones will cry out." And today, it seems the stones, the rivers, and even the sky are doing exactly that. The question now isn't whether these events are real. The cameras have already proved that. The question is, why are they happening together? Because throughout history, whenever heaven moved, earth responded. When the flood came, the ground split open. When Christ was crucified, the rocks themselves broke apart. And now, as prophecy unfolds once more, creation trembles again, not in chaos, but in recognition. It is as if the world itself remembers who made it and senses that He is near. When lights appear in the heavens and the earth trembles beneath, we're left with one question. What is all of this trying to say? Because at first glance, each phenomenon seems separate, unconnected, accidental. But when you step back and look at the world as a whole, the pattern becomes undeniable. The skies are moving, the seas are changing, and the sounds of the earth seem to echo the words written thousands of years ago. There will be signs in the heavens above and on the earth below, blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. Acts 2:19. These are not just signs of destruction. They are messages of mercy, a warning before the shaking becomes unbearable. Scientists continue to analyze atmospheric vibrations, magnetic anomalies, algal blooms, and yes, they are right to search for answers. But what if they are only studying the instrument and not listening to the music it plays? Every event, whether in the sky, the sea, or the soil, seems to carry the same rhythm, the same pulse. It's the rhythm of a creation groaning for redemption. The Bible calls it birth pains, contractions before something new is born. And birth, by nature, is both beautiful and violent. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. Romans 8:22. This is not random chaos. It's the sound of a world that knows its maker is drawing near. And yet, while the world debates UFOs and red seas, the real danger isn't in the sky or in the earth. It's in the silence of the human heart. Because the greatest blindness is not failing to see the signs, but seeing them, and refusing to believe what they mean. In every age, God has spoken through creation: thunder, wind, flame, storm. But now, as these signs multiply, He speaks one last message. Wake up. I am near, not to terrify, but to invite. Not to condemn, but to prepare. When Jesus rebuked the Pharisees, He said, "You know how to read the sky and predict the weather, but you cannot discern the signs of the times." Matthew 16:3. We've mastered the science of the atmosphere, but forgotten the language of heaven. Maybe these lights and sounds are not warnings of alien invasion, but invitations to look higher. Maybe the red waters and locust storms are not punishments, but reflections, mirrors of what we've become. Humanity has learned to decode the stars, to send rockets beyond the moon, yet struggles to lift its eyes to the one who made the stars. And so, creation itself begins to preach. It speaks in the only way it can, through disruption, through awe, through beauty and fear woven together. Because even in its shaking, the world is still declaring, He is coming. Every flash in the sky, every trembling in the earth, every trumpet in the clouds. They're not just news events, they're rehearsals, signals that history is moving toward a divine appointment. And just as the sky once split open for the flood, and again for the resurrection, so it will open once more, not in mystery, but in revelation. These are not the days of silence. These are the days of awakening. The heavens have spoken. The earth has answered. Now, the question is, will humanity listen? The silence before the final trumpet. There's a moment in every story, right before the storm breaks. A stillness so deep, it feels like the world is holding its breath. That's where we are now, between the signs and the silence, between what has been revealed and what's about to unfold. The heavens have spoken, through lights that move with intelligence, through clouds that thunder without rain. The earth has answered, with waters turned crimson, with locusts that devour fields, with sounds that echo like a warning from another realm. And now, all creation seems to pause, waiting for what comes next. The Bible calls it the silence in heaven for about half an hour. Revelation 8:1. A sacred pause before the trumpet sounds, a moment of mercy before judgment. It's easy to dismiss the signs as coincidence, to scroll past them like fleeting headlines. But deep down, something in us knows. These are not just meteorological anomalies. They are messages. Whispers from a creator reminding his creation that time does not stand still forever. So what do we do in the silence? We listen. We turn our eyes upward. We remember that prophecy was never meant to terrify us. It was meant to prepare us. Because soon, the skies will not just flicker with unexplained lights. They will open. And the same voice that once said, "Let there be light," will speak again. Until then, we stand between heaven and earth, watchers of the signs, keepers of the hope. And in this quiet before the final trumpet, may every heartbeat echo one simple prayer. Lord, open our eyes, before the heavens open once more. Something is happening in the sky, quietly, without announcement. Astronomers have been watching a distant traveler, Comet C/2024 G3, Atlas. At first, it appeared only as a faint trace, barely distinguishable from the background of stars. But month after month, as it draws closer to the sun, it grows brighter, as though responding to a call older than history itself. No headlines declare urgency. No voice claims certainty. Yet the change is there. Steady, patient, undeniable. Some things move in silence for a long time, until the light finally reveals them. And for many, the sight of a brightening object in the sky stirs a memory of words recorded long before telescopes were crafted or orbits were measured. A memory of a star that falls, burning. The question rises, without needing to be asked. Why does this moment feel remembered? A star called Wormwood. There is a passage written nearly 2,000 years ago, composed on an isolated island by a man who had nothing left in the world but vision and memory. It does not attempt to persuade or warn through argument. It simply states what was seen. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. Revelation 8:10-11, KJV. The words stand with a kind of deliberate clarity. A great star suggests something seen, noticeable, commanding attention. Fell from heaven implies direction rather than accident. Movement along a path, not drift or chaos. Burning, as it were, a lamp, evokes the image of something that becomes visible not through destruction, but through proximity to light and heat, as comets do when they approach the sun. But the most striking phrase is the simplest. The name of the star is called Wormwood. Not will be called, not named later, not identified by those who see it. It is called. The name precedes human recognition. The identity comes before the observation. This suggests something more than astronomy. It suggests intention, or at least sequence, meaning before discovery. There are things in the universe that have been moving along their paths long before anyone on Earth learned to lift their eyes to the sky. When humanity finally sees them, the seeing is not the beginning. It is merely the moment of recognition. Wormwood, then, is not just an object. It represents a point in time when something distant becomes impossible to ignore. The emphasis in the passage is not on sudden catastrophe, but on appearance, on the moment when what was concealed becomes visible. The passage speaks not of randomness, but of timing. A star already named, already known, revealed at the hour appointed for the world to look upward. No conclusions are drawn here. No identification is asserted. Instead, there is simply the awareness that the text describes a pattern. Something far becoming near. Something silent becoming seen. Something ancient returning into human sight. And when such a pattern appears in the sky, people remember the words, even if they do not know why. And the moment when something becomes visible is never random. The next part of the story is not about the star itself, but the world that first saw it happen. When the prophecy was still ancient, the vision that speaks of wormwood was recorded in a world that understood the sky not through mathematics, but through meaning. When John wrote the book of Revelation on the island of Patmos, he lived in a time when the heavens were a realm of signs. The night sky was not an empty field, but a living tapestry through which the divine might speak. To the ancient world, the sky held memory. It held continuity. It held intention. Nothing that appeared above them was ever considered accidental. John did not have the vocabulary of orbital mechanics or cosmic chemistry. There was no understanding of solar radiation pressure, gas sublimation, or elliptical trajectories. Yet the experience he described is one we can recognize instantly today. A distant object entering the region of heat and light, becoming visible only when the sun reveals it. Something once unseen beginning to glow. A star that burns like a lamp. And a great star fell from heaven, burning, as it were, a lamp. Revelation 8:10, KJV. To John, this was the clearest language available to describe what he saw. Not the language of science, but the language of sight, of experience, of awe. A torch descending through the darkness, a streak of brightness cutting across the night. Something that once belonged to distances beyond human reach, now moving toward the world of men. In John's time, comets were events that drew entire cities outdoors. The Greeks believed they signaled the rise and fall of rulers. Babylonian astronomers etched them onto clay tablets as symbols of turning eras. In China, imperial scholars documented their appearances meticulously, believing their arrival corresponded with shifts in fate and history. Long before the first telescope was crafted, civilizations understood that the sky had a way of speaking at the exact moment its message mattered. This was the world in which John saw the star fall. His vision was not an isolated prophecy, torn from its context. It belonged to a worldview in which time was not a straight line, but a series of recurring patterns, cycles in which what once happened could happen again. A world in which God, history, and the heavens all moved in rhythm. When John described wormwood, he was not trying to prove anything. He was remembering something that felt familiar, something that seemed to echo from the distant past into the future. The name of the star is called wormwood. Revelation 8:11, KJV. This line sits quietly at the center of the passage, yet it carries the greatest weight. The star does not receive its name. It already has one. It is called wormwood. The identity comes before the appearance. The meaning exists before the observation. This suggests that the event is not random. It is part of a pattern, a timing, a moment written into the unfolding of history long before anyone watching the sky had the tools to identify celestial objects. The star is not simply discovered, it is recognized, and recognition requires memory. It requires something in the present to resemble something from the past, closely enough that the mind begins to connect them before the voice finds the words. John could not have known about the Oort cloud, a distant sphere of icy bodies beyond the orbit of Pluto. He could not have known that comets may take thousands of years to complete a single journey. But he understood something equally true. Some things travel long distances in silence, unseen, until the moment appointed for them to appear. In his time, a star that brightened as it drew nearer to warmth would look like a flame, a torch, a lamp set alight. There was no need for explanation. The image spoke for itself. and that image has remained unchanged. Even now, when a comet approaches the sun, it awakens. Ice older than human civilization begins to vaporize. Dust lifts away, forming a glowing tail. The body does not burn, yet it appears to. Light wraps it. A trail follows it. It becomes a traveler clothed in fire. The words of the prophecy do not degrade with time. They do not become outdated with knowledge. They remain what they were, a description of sight before science. And now, with the tools of modern observation, humanity watches the sky with the same posture John's world once held, waiting, measuring, wondering. Yet beneath all the technology, the reaction is the same as it has always been. A quiet stirring of the human spirit when something once hidden begins to reveal itself. The distance between ancient scripture and modern astronomy is not contradiction. It is continuity. One describes what is seen. The other describes how it happens. The imagery in Revelation does not attempt to define the mechanics of a celestial body. It seeks to express the moment of recognition, the moment when something long unobserved enters the realm of the visible. And now, centuries later, the words return not because someone forced them into meaning, but because the sky itself has offered a familiar picture. A distant traveler brightens, a flame-like trail forms. People look up. It is not certainty that draws this connection. It is recognition, not proof. Memory, a memory shared across ages. A memory that surfaces only when the time to notice has arrived. The ancient description was a memory waiting for recognition. And now, something in our sky is moving into the light. The question becomes, what happens when the world notices? The object approaches the light. In our time, the night sky is mapped, measured, and monitored with a precision the ancient world could never have imagined. Orbiting telescopes sweep the darkness. Automated surveys scan for anything that moves. Observatories in desert mountains, shielded from the noise of cities, record faint glimmers that would have been invisible to the naked eye. And yet, even with all of this technology, the experience of seeing a comet awaken is still something deeply human. It does not feel like data. It feels like memory, as though something familiar is returning from a distance so vast we can barely comprehend it. Comet C/2024 G3 Atlas is one of those distant travelers. It is what astronomers call a long-period comet, an object whose orbit may extend tens of thousands of years into the outer reaches beyond the known planets. It comes from a region where sunlight is only a whisper, and where time unfolds in spans that surpass the length of civilizations. For most of its journey, Atlas would have moved in absolute silence, gliding through the deep where the stars themselves appear frozen, where nothing changes quickly, and where human history is no more than a blink of light. For centuries, perhaps millennia, the comet remained unseen. It passed no telescopes, no cameras, no watchers. The world below rose and fell through ages of stone and bronze and iron while the comet continued on, untouched, unnoticed. Empires formed, fought, flourished, and dissolved. Kingdoms were forgotten, cities were buried and rediscovered, languages were born and lost. Meanwhile, the comet traveled its arc in darkness, unaffected by everything that mattered so deeply to the world beneath it. But now, its long and silent path has brought it inward, toward warmth and gravity and light. And as it draws near to the sun, it begins to change, not abruptly, but gradually, as if awakening from a long sleep. The surface, once locked in ice, begins to shift. Ancient frozen material, older than any human memory, begins to vaporize. Dust and gas rise and drift behind it. A tail forms, not a flame, though it looks like one, but a veil of reflected sunlight stretched across the night. The comet glows simply because it has come close enough to something greater than itself. The closer it moves to the sun, the brighter it becomes. This is a law not only of science, but of symbolism. Things hidden in darkness are revealed only when they approach the source of illumination. Atlas does not shine by its own power. It shines because something greater reveals it. This is the moment when astronomers begin to notice. At first, ATLAS was nothing more than a faint gray smudge detected in survey images. Software identified it. Observers confirmed it. For weeks, it was an object so small and distant that only trained eyes and careful instruments could tell it apart from noise. But then, slowly, almost reluctantly, it began to brighten. Not dramatically, not in a way that draws headlines, but consistently. Month after month, the increase in luminosity continued. Sky watchers, people who spend long nights outside for no reason other than that the sky is magnificent, started to pay attention. Not with fanfare, but with curiosity. Images began to circulate among small and quiet communities. Astrophotography forums, observatory logs, niche astronomy groups where people speak in calm and exact language. No dramatic claims, no urgency, just careful attention. This one is brightening faster than expected. This curve is worth watching. It may become visible to the naked eye. These are not declarations. They are the early signals of something beginning to reveal itself. If Atlas continues along its current trajectory, there will come a time, not long from now, when it could be seen without telescopes. A single point of light, moving against the background of fixed stars. Quiet, steady, unmistakable to anyone who simply looks up at the right moment. Comets do not announce themselves to the world with noise. They reveal themselves in silence. They do not rush. Their arrival is not sudden. It is patient, precise, measured by scales of time we rarely consider. When people in the ancient world stepped outside their homes and looked up, they saw the sky as part of their lives. The movement of a star mattered. The appearance of a comet mattered. These events were woven into the rhythms of seasons, rituals, and history. Today, the sky is distant for most people. The night is washed away by artificial light. Few know how to read the constellations. Few have reason to step outside and look upward simply to see what the heavens are doing. And yet, even now, when a comet brightens, something familiar stirs in the human mind. We recognize the movement, even if we do not fully understand it. It is not simply that a point of light appears. It is the sense of something returning, something ancient, something older than us. This is where the pattern begins to take shape. A distant traveler, once invisible, draws nearer to the source of light and becomes visible. It reveals itself gradually, not loudly, not violently, but with calm inevitability. And as it reveals itself, memory awakens. The mind recalls an image, a description, a line written once in a vision. And a great star fell from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. Revelation 8:10. No one needs to claim that ATLAS is wormwood. No one needs to insist that prophecy is being fulfilled. The significance lies not in declaration, but in recognition. When something was described in imagery before science existed, and science later observes a phenomenon that looks like the image, the connection is not forced. It is natural. It is the way the human mind identifies patterns across time. Recognition is not certainty. Recognition is awareness. The sky does not shout. It whispers. It asks only one question: are you watching? Atlas continues its movement. The brightness continues to rise. The tail lengthens like a pale brush stroke across the dark. The world keeps turning. People go to work. Markets rise and fall. News cycles pass. But above all of it, something is happening quietly, patiently, just as it has always done. The heavens are never still. They speak in motion. And sometimes, when something long unseen begins to shine, it is not the object that is new. It is our attention that has returned. The sky is not announcing anything yet. It is preparing us to notice. But the prophecy was never about the star alone. It was about what changes after the star has passed. The detail that is often overlooked. When people hear the word wormwood, the imagination usually leaps to the dramatic moment. A star falling, a collision with the earth, the sky tearing open in flame. That is the picture many hold, not because the text insists on it, but because the human mind instinctively gravitates towards spectacle. Yet there is a detail in the ancient passage that is easy to overlook, a detail that changes everything. And the waters became wormwood. Revelation 8:11, KJV. The focus is not the fall of the star. It is the change in the waters, not the blaze, not the descent. The water, the quiet foundation of life. Rivers, springs, hidden reservoirs beneath the soil. All the places where life begins, replenishes, sustains. The scripture does not emphasize the moment of impact. It emphasizes what happens afterward. The star does not end life in a single instant. Something else happens. Something slower, subtler, more persistent. Water changes. And when water changes, the world changes. This is the part we rarely notice, because our attention is drawn to events that explode, not to events that unfold. But water does not announce itself. It simply continues flowing, even when something inside it has shifted. And because it is so familiar, so ordinary, we do not realize how much depends on it until hesitation enters the first sip. Wormwood in Scripture has always been linked to bitterness, not just in taste, but in experience. It refers to a moment when something that should nourish instead becomes difficult to receive. Something once trusted becomes uncertain. Something that gave life becomes something one must second-guess. When the text says many died because the waters were made bitter, it is not describing chaos. It is describing vulnerability, how quickly stability can falter when the most quiet and essential things are altered. A glass of water does not have to turn black or red or toxic to change a life. It only needs to shift enough to make someone pause. Today, in our world, the transformations are already happening. Not with spectacle, but with accumulation. Tiny particles drifting into rivers, salt pushing slowly inland through deltas, reservoirs thinning mile by mile, drought tracing new borders across continents, the taste of water changing one mineral at a time. Changes that are easy to ignore because they do not arrive suddenly. They arrive gradually, like a comet brightening in the night sky. What is striking about the ancient passage is not that it predicts a celestial event. It is that it points to an effect that unfolds slowly in the background, almost without notice. The text is not describing the drama of the sky. It is describing the shift of what sustains life. And this is where the pattern begins to take form. A distant object becomes visible. Attention rises. But the true change happens quietly, at ground level. Not in the sky where all can see, but in the water where the ordinary lives. It is not the spectacle that carries the meaning. It is the aftermath. The ancient text does not ask us to fear the fall of the star. It asks us to notice what happens once it has passed. Not every sign arrives with thunder. Some signs arrive in whispers, in slight changes, in things we trust without thinking. A river becomes difficult to drink. a spring becomes uncertain. A taste changes slightly, and the hesitation goes unnoticed because life continues, and routine is strong, and awareness is slow. This is how quiet transformations work. Subtle at first, steady in time, clear only in hindsight. A star in the sky draws attention, but water on the earth determines survival. And so, the ancient passage makes its point not in the fire, but in the aftertaste. Not in the fall, but in the foundation. Not in spectacle, but in sustenance. Wormwood is not about a moment of destruction. It is about the realization that something essential has shifted. The sky may dazzle, but life changes in the quiet places. In what we drink, in what we rely on, in what we assume will always remain the same. Some signs do not shout, they whisper, and those whispers are heard only by those who are listening. If the water changes, the world changes, and it never changes loudly. The pattern is already forming. We just haven't stepped back far enough to see it yet. When patterns begin to reveal themselves, there are moments in history when events do not shout, yet they leave an impression impossible to ignore. Patterns do not announce themselves. They emerge, slowly, quietly, with the inevitability of something that has been building for a long time. A comet once hidden in the dark begins to brighten. A verse once read and forgotten begins to return to memory. A quiet element like water begins to shift in small, unremarkable ways. None of these things, on their own, demand alarm. Yet together, they form a shape. A distant traveler approaches the center of the system. The world looks up, and something ancient stirs, the sense that we have seen this before, not in memory, but in recognition. The description in Revelation was not technical. It was observational. It was written by someone watching something he could not name, only describe. And now, science gives us names, compositions, orbital models. Yet the image remains familiar. A great star, burning, descending from distances beyond ordinary measure. The human reaction to this is not fear. It is quiet clarity, because the pattern is not about the comet alone. It is about timing. Things that remain unseen for centuries do not become visible without reason. Water does not shift without consequence. Memory does not return without purpose. This is not about declaring what is or is not wormwood. It is about noticing a rhythm that has been written into the world itself. Distance, arrow; approach, arrow; brightening, arrow; recognition. This rhythm has played out before, though on smaller scales. Empires rising and fading, eras opening and closing, seasons shifting without sound. But the sky has always been the largest stage of all. And when something moves across it in slow revelation, it is almost always a sign that a chapter is turning. Not loudly, not suddenly, but unmistakably. The world continues as always. People wake, work, sleep, forget, repeat. And overhead, a traveler continues its steady path toward the light. Some will see nothing in it. Others will recognize the pattern, not because they were told to, but because something in them already knew to look up. This is not certainty, it is recognition. And recognition always comes before revelation. The sky is almost ready to speak. The only question now is who will be paying attention. When the sky is no longer silent. There are nights when the sky feels still, unchanged, as though it has always been and will always remain the same. But then, a single point of light begins to move. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough for the attentive to notice. Comets do not announce themselves. They return when their time comes. C/2024. G3 continues its approach. Not loud, not urgent, simply persistent. The increase in brightness is steady, almost restrained, like something stepping into a light that was always waiting for it. Whether it is a sign, a reminder, or simply a traveler completing its ancient path, is not something that must be answered now. Meaning is not always immediate. Understanding rarely arrives all at once. For now, the sky offers something quiet and rare. A reason to look upward, even for a moment. Because some things are only seen by those who remember to watch.
Do you hear it?
Oh, do you hear that noise? That's like...
Have you ever gazed upwards and pondered the peculiar sounds echoing from above? Across the planet, individuals are reporting inexplicable noises that appear to emanate from the celestial sphere. In vibrant metropolises like New York and Los Angeles, as well as in secluded regions in Arizona and New Zealand, the atmosphere is filled with eerie, trumpet-like sounds that leave us both fascinated and apprehensive. In January 2022, the tranquility of Spokane, Washington, was shattered by loud, unexplained noises echoing through the night. These occurrences weren't isolated. Similar reports emerged from Alberta, Canada, in March 2023, where baffling metallic scraping sounds were heard. This has led many to question if these are signs of the end times, a concern amplified when we examine biblical prophecies. In Luke 21:11, Jesus foretold great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events and great signs from heaven. Are these strange sounds and sights the very signs Jesus cautioned us about? These reports are not confined to a single region. In June 2021, a small town in Germany was startled by eerie trumpet-like sounds seemingly originating from the sky. Likewise, in August 2022, the city of Kiev in Ukraine was filled with haunting sounds that left residents searching the heavens for answers. In Matthew 24:6-7, Jesus warned of wars and rumors of wars, urging us not to be alarmed, as these are precursors to the end. He further spoke of nations and kingdoms rising against each other, accompanied by famines and earthquakes in various places. Considering the recent surge in natural disasters, such as the unprecedented 30 named storms in the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season and the devastating wildfires that ravaged over 10.3 million acres in the United States the same year, it becomes evident that these are not isolated events. Furthermore, the rise in natural disasters is not the sole sign to consider. The COVID-19 pandemic, which emerged in late 2019, has caused unparalleled disruption and suffering worldwide. With millions of deaths and countless lives affected, this pandemic aligns with the pestilences mentioned in Luke 21:11. The global response, the fear, and the uncertainty it has caused underscore the fragility of human life and the importance of spiritual preparedness. When we examine these prophecies, the connections become evident. The Bible provides a roadmap of signs that precede the end times. The sounds heard in the sky, the strange lights, and the unusual cloud formations echo these warnings, forming part of a larger divine narrative that calls for our attention and reflection. But what about other signs from heaven? We've observed unusual celestial phenomena like the super-blood wolf moon in 2019, captivating observers worldwide. Many interpreted this as a celestial sign, echoing the prophetic words in Revelation. Revelation 8:6-7 paints a vivid picture of devastation, with hail, fire, and blood hurled down upon the earth, burning up a third of the land and vegetation. This imagery is strikingly similar to the intensifying natural disasters we are witnessing today. The wildfires, not just in the US, but also in regions like Australia and the Amazon, have caused unprecedented destruction. The 2019-2020 Australian bushfires alone burned an estimated 46 million acres, resonating with the devastation described in Revelation. The increase in meteor sightings and near-Earth objects can also be interpreted as precursors to the celestial events described in Revelation. Revelation 8:10-11 speaks of a great star falling from the sky, turning waters bitter and causing death. While we haven't witnessed a literal star fall, the rise in meteor sightings and near-Earth objects serves as a stark reminder of our planet's vulnerability to such events. The 2013 Chelyabinsk meteor explosion in Russia, which caused injuries and extensive damage, underscores this vulnerability. The Bible doesn't predict these events to instill fear, but to prepare us. In Matthew 24:42, Jesus advises, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come." This verse underscores the importance of spiritual readiness, encouraging us to remain alert and live in a manner that reflects our readiness for Jesus' return. The sounds and sights we are experiencing are not random occurrences, but fit within a pattern described in the Scriptures. The escalating natural disasters, the peculiar phenomena in the sky, and the global pandemic appear to be pieces of a larger divine puzzle. These occurrences prompt us to reflect on our lives and our faith, urging us to contemplate our spiritual preparedness for what lies ahead. Understanding these signs through the lens of biblical prophecy helps us grasp their true significance. It's not merely about being alarmed, but about being aware and ready. The Bible offers a framework to interpret these events and understand their deeper meaning. Are we paying attention to these signs? Are we ready for what they signify? Let's examine how these prophecies and current events intertwine. The trumpet-like sounds reported globally could be likened to the trumpets in Revelation, which signal significant events. The unusual cloud formations and lights in the sky can be seen as manifestations of the celestial disruptions described in the Bible. Together, these events create a tapestry of signs that point to a grander divine narrative. In Matthew 24:30, Jesus speaks of the ultimate sign in the sky, his return. He says, "Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." The strange sounds and sights we're witnessing today can be seen as precursors, preparing us for this monumental event. Are we truly ready for his return? As we examine these alarming phenomena, let's explore their implications. What do they signify for us today? How do they align with the larger biblical narrative? Let's delve into specific occurrences that have captivated global attention and sparked profound unease. These events are not isolated. They're happening worldwide, leaving people intrigued and apprehensive. In Spokane, Washington, in January 2022, loud, inexplicable noises echoing through the night startled residents. Imagine being jolted awake by sounds so bizarre that they prompt questions about the nature of reality. These disturbances continued, sparking widespread conjecture and worry. Residents shared their experiences on social media, capturing these eerie sounds on video. The prevailing question was, what could this be? Moving north to Alberta, Canada, in March 2023, similar peculiar noises were heard. Residents likened them to metallic scraping and distant roars. John, a local farmer, shared his experience, saying, "Initially, we assumed it was machinery or the wind, but it was too persistent and unsettling. We began praying, seeking divine guidance and protection." John's account is one of many where people turn to their faith for solace and answers. In Germany, in June 2021, a small town was enveloped by eerie trumpet-like sounds, seemingly descending from the sky. Hans, a local shopkeeper, described it as being inside a colossal bell. The sounds were so profound that they stopped people in their tracks, leading to spontaneous gatherings to discuss their meaning. Many consulted the Bible, seeking verses that might illuminate their experience. In Kiev, Ukraine, in August 2022, the entire city was filled with strange, haunting noises of unknown origin. Elena, a local teacher, vividly remembers that night, saying, "It was unlike anything I'd ever heard. It felt like the heavens were communicating with us." Many gathered outside, gazing upward, pondering its significance. These personal stories underscore the deep impact these phenomena have on individuals and communities. The UK has also had its share of mysterious sounds. In March 2021, residents in Bristol reported hearing low-frequency humming noises lasting for days. These hums, often described as a drone or a distant engine, caused discomfort and anxiety among the locals. Many took to online forums to share their experiences and theories, with some attributing the sounds to underground drilling, while others speculated about more enigmatic explanations. Let's delve into some scientific explanations. One theory attributes these sounds to tectonic movements. As tectonic plates shift and grind against each other, they can generate low-frequency sounds that propagate through the Earth and into the atmosphere. These sounds, often referred to as skyquakes, could be responsible for some of the phenomena we're hearing. Another theory proposes that atmospheric pressure changes, extreme weather conditions, or solar activity can cause fluctuations in atmospheric pressure, generating sounds that resonate through the sky. For example, auroras caused by solar wind interacting with the Earth's magnetic field can produce sounds under specific conditions. Similarly, strong winds or storms can create pressure waves that might explain some of the mysterious noises. In October 2021, a perfectly circular cloud over Moscow, Russia, caused traffic to halt as people exited their vehicles to capture photos and videos. In February 2022, mysterious lights moving in patterns unlike any known aircraft were sighted over New Zealand, leaving people perplexed. While some scientists suggest these lights could be atmospheric phenomena or human-made objects, many believe they are signs from above. These unusual events prompt us to contemplate their spiritual significance and consider whether they are divine messages urging us to remain vigilant. Let's not forget the significant earthquakes and volcanic activities that have also raised concerns. In March 2011, Japan was devastated by a massive earthquake and subsequent tsunami, resulting in the Fukushima nuclear disaster. This event not only caused immense physical destruction, but also left a lasting psychological impact globally. Similarly, the 2021 eruption of Mount Etna in Italy showcased nature's raw power, reminding us of the Earth's dynamic and often unpredictable nature. These events are perplexing, and people naturally seek explanations. Scientists have put forth various theories to explain these strange sounds. However, these scientific explanations often fall short of providing a comprehensive understanding. They might explain some incidents, but don't account for the widespread and consistent nature of reports from various parts of the world. The unexplained nature of many of these events leaves room for other interpretations, especially when these sounds are heard in remote areas without industrial activity. In conclusion, let us not be consumed by fear or despair, but instead embrace spiritual preparedness by dedicating ourselves to prayer, studying the Bible, engaging with our community, living out our faith through action, and maintaining hope in God's promises. As we continue to witness the signs of the times, let us remain vigilant and hopeful, seeking guidance from God and supporting one another in love. Remember, the old order of things has passed away, and a new era filled with God's redemption and restoration awaits us. I urge you to join our community, where we can delve deeper into these topics, share experiences, and encourage each other on this journey of faith. Your participation is invaluable, so please like, subscribe, and share this video with others who may also seek understanding and hope. Together, let us face the future with confidence, knowing that God's love and grace will guide us through every trial and tribulation. May God bless you abundantly as you continue to seek Him and His truth. Something is happening, not on the news, not in speeches, not on the stages of the world. It's happening quietly, almost silently, in a way that most people would never notice unless they were looking closely. Across nations, across cultures, across beliefs, a generation is moving. In Israel, while the city sleeps, there are young men and women who walk toward the Western Wall in the dark hours before dawn. No crowds, no cameras, no rabbi calling them, no movement telling them to go. They come because something inside them is being stirred. They stand before the ancient stones not as tourists, not as students of history, but as those who feel summoned. They do not speak loudly. Their prayers are quiet. Their faces are steady. It would be easy to overlook this if it was only happening in one city. But it's not. Across the ocean, in nations once filled with churches and cathedrals, the young are leaving tradition behind. But they are not becoming empty. They are searching. They are hungry in a way words cannot explain. There is a restlessness in them, a sense that the world they were handed is not the world that will remain, a sense that something is ending and something is beginning. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, preparations for the Third Temple have reached a stage that only a few decades ago would have been unimaginable. Priests have been identified by lineage. Garments have been woven, utensils forged. The altar stands ready. All of this is happening at the same time. Different places, different cultures, different expressions. But one movement, a rising, a calling, a gathering of something ancient that is waking inside a generation that did not ask for it, but cannot ignore it. The prophets spoke of a time when the Spirit of God would be poured out before the day of the Lord. Not on the elders of faith, not on kings or rulers, on the young. They said there would be a generation that would not be defined by where they came from, but by who called them. A generation that would be stirred not by religion, but by revelation. A generation that would not follow the world's direction, but would turn back toward the mountain from which their calling began. You can feel it, not in the noise of public life, but in the stillness that comes just before something breaks open. If prophecy unfolds not in a single moment, but across a generation, then we are standing in the opening scene of it. The question is no longer, is something happening? The question is, do we recognize the awakening when it begins? Because once an awakening begins, it does not stop for anyone. Israel has always been the clock of biblical time, not because of geography, not because of politics, but because this is where the word began, and this is where it returns. Every prophecy concerning the end of the age turns back toward Jerusalem. There is no alternative. That is why every true shift, every real movement, begins here first. Not in governments, not in news cycles, not on world stages, but in the hearts of those who live here. Recently, something has changed, not at the level of announcements, not through institutions, but in the quiet hours of the city. While Jerusalem still sleeps, There are young men and women who walk toward the Western Wall long before sunrise. No ceremony, no leader calling them, no campaign urging them to come. They simply come, not together, not in organized groups, not according to schedule. They arrive as if responding to a call only they can hear. They do not raise their voices. They do not perform emotion. They do not come to be seen. They stand, or they sit, or they place a hand upon the stone. Small movements, but movements with weight. Because when a young person returns to pray, it is not habit, it is inner conflict. It means something inside is being stirred, awakened, remembered. This generation has grown up in a world with endless choice, endless distraction, endless noise. They could choose anything. They could follow any worldview. They could walk away from every tradition their ancestors held. So if they come back, if they return to the place where covenant was spoken, it is not superstition. It is not nostalgia. It is recognition. They are remembering something older than the modern state, older than the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, older than the first temple or the second temple, older than the exile, older even than Moses. They are remembering the covenant of belonging, the knowing deep in the soul that there is a God who called them before they knew how to speak His name. Belonging does not need to be taught. It only needs to be awakened. The youth of Israel are not relearning faith. They are remembering it. Memory is a strange thing. We think memory belongs to the mind, but the deepest memories live in the soul. A nation can forget with its words. A generation can forget with its culture. But the soul remembers what the mind does not. This is why the return of the youth in Israel is not a trend. Trends come and go. Trends move with popularity. But what is happening now moves beneath popularity. It moves where identity is formed. There is a reason God called Israel His firstborn, not because Israel was the strongest, not because Israel was the largest, but because Israel would be the nation that remembers first. When the nations forget who they are, Israel remembers. When the world loses itself in noise, Israel turns toward the quiet. When history feels like it is breaking apart, Israel returns to the place where history began. This is not the religion of their grandparents. This is the calling of their origin. The voice that called Abraham. The fire that spoke to Moses. The covenant that was carved into stone long before temples were ever built. A generation does not return to God by accident. Something is calling them, and the call is older than they are. This is not a public revival. It is not a national campaign. It is not a return to religion as an institution. It is the quiet realignment of identity. A generation rediscovering who they are and whose they are. Jerusalem does not shout this. The stones do not announce it. But anyone who has stood there in the silence knows. What is happening now is not the end. It is the beginning. The repositioning of a generation before the world changes shape. When Israel shifts internally, the world shifts externally. And that shift has already begun. In the West, something different is happening. Churches are closing. Attendance is declining. Institutions of faith that once shaped entire cultures are losing their influence. On the surface, it looks like belief is fading. It looks like a generation is walking away from God. But that is only the surface. Because while the structures are being abandoned, the search for meaning has intensified. The young are not becoming empty. They are becoming restless. They are looking for something real, something unmanufactured, something deeper than tradition or routine. They are asking questions that the systems around them cannot answer. What is the purpose of existence? Why does the soul feel divided? What does it mean to be human, In a world where everything is monitored, digitized, and measured, they are not turning away from God. They are turning away from a version of faith that no longer feels alive to them. The old forms are fading, but the hunger is growing. The hunger is not the problem. The hunger is the sign. This is exactly what the prophets described. They said there would come a time when the world would not hunger for food or thirst for water. Amos 8:11. I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of the Lord. A famine of the word, but a hunger for truth. And we are watching that famine unfold. Empty churches, but full meditation halls. A decline in formal belief, but a rise in spiritual searching. People rejecting religious identity, yet asking spiritual questions more openly than they have in centuries. This is not disbelief. It is dislocation. The ground beneath them is shifting. The world they inherited does not match the world they now live in. Technology changed the pace of life. Global systems reshaped identity. The soul has not caught up. It is looking for where to stand. And that is why the hunger has become so sharp. Many look for direction in philosophy, psychology, or wellness culture. Some turn to the occult. Some turn to atheism. Some turn to silence. Most are not hostile to God. They simply no longer know where to find Him. And when a generation cannot locate God externally, it begins to look internally. This is where the West and Israel meet. In Israel, the awakening is a memory resurfacing, a covenant remembered. In the West, the awakening is a hunger intensifying, a truth sought. Two different expressions, same movement. A return is beginning, not back to the past, but back to origin. The origin of identity, the origin of meaning, the origin of the soul's anchor. When the West hungers and Israel remembers, the world has reached a threshold. This is not coincidence. This is convergence. And convergence always comes before revelation. The third temple. The pieces are already in place. While the world debates politics, while headlines rise and fade, there has been a steady and deliberate work taking place in Jerusalem. Not loud, not public, not dramatic, but consistent. The preparations for the Third Temple are no longer theoretical. They are no longer prophetic speculation. They are physical, tangible, and measurable. The priestly lineage has been identified, not through legend or genealogy alone, but through DNA verification tracing back to the sons of Aaron. The garments required for service have been woven according to ancient instruction. Not symbolic garments, but functional ones. The instruments of worship have been crafted. Silver trumpets, gold vessels, the table of showbread, the incense altar, the menorah. The blueprints for the temple layout exist in completed form. The altar has already been built, and it has already been used. Not in secret, not in theory, but in real trial sacrifice ceremonies carried out to ensure that every detail aligns with the ancient command. Even the red heifer, the requirement without which purification cannot begin, once thought impossible to find for centuries, now exists. Not one, several, raised in conditions that prevent even the smallest blemish. This is not a concept. This is readiness, and readiness is never accidental. None of these pieces existed together at any other point in modern history. Not in 1948, when Israel became a nation. Not in 1967, when Jerusalem returned to Jewish control. Not in any revival movement or political shift of the past century. Only now. And yet, the temple itself has not risen. Not because the pieces are missing, but because something else must come first. The temple cannot stand without a generation prepared to serve in it. A building does not define a covenant. A heart does. This is where the convergence becomes clear. Israel remembers. The West hungers. The world accelerates toward digital control and global unification. And the temple stands on the threshold of return. The prophets did not describe the rebuilding of the temple as an isolated event. They placed it within a sequence. Daniel 9:27. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. A covenant, an agreement, a moment of global alignment. The temple is not the beginning of the prophetic timeline. It is the sign that the timeline has already shifted. And that is why what is happening now matters. Not because stones will rise, but because the spiritual identity of a generation is returning to the place from which the covenant was first spoken. When the heart returns, the altar follows. When the altar returns, the temple follows. When the temple returns, the world enters the final sequence. We are not watching preparation, we are watching positioning. And positioning always comes before revelation. In Scripture, there is always a remnant, a small number within the many, not the loud, not the powerful, simply the ones who can still hear. The remnant is rising now, not through organization, not through leadership, but through recognition. They recognize the hour, they recognize the stirring, they recognize the return. Prophecy does not unfold in a single moment. It unfolds in alignment. When separate movements begin to point in the same direction, when different parts of the world experience different symptoms of the same spiritual shift, when signs that once seemed disconnected begin to form a pattern, that is convergence. Israel is remembering. The West is hungering. The preparations for the temple are complete in everything but location and timing. And the systems of the world are moving toward global unity, not by force, but by convenience, through finance, technology, communication, and identity. These are not isolated developments. They are pieces of the same structure rising at the same time. The prophets describe this, not as a revival, not as a cultural transformation, but as an awakening before judgment. They said there would be a calling, not to institutions, not to tradition, but to God Himself. Joel 2:28. I will pour out my Spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. The sign of the last generation is not the collapse of the world. It is the awakening of the young. This awakening is not loud. It is not political. It is not emotional. It does not look like crusades or rallies or global evangelism movements. It looks like a quiet clarity, a moment when the soul realizes that what is real is not the world it sees, but the one who made it. This is why the youth in Israel return to the wall in silence. This is why the youth in the West search for meaning in places the church has not reached. This is why the pieces of the temple are ready, even though the temple is not yet standing. The book of Revelation also describes a people who awaken before the final sequence begins. They are not defined by power. They are not defined by numbers. They are defined by identity, by who they belong to. Revelation 14:1. Then I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. The meaning is not in the number. The meaning is in the stance. They stand. They are prepared. They are marked by belonging, not by force. Prophecy does not say, they understood everything. It says, they knew who they were. There is a generation right now rising into that identity. Not all at once, not in unison, but like embers that begin to glow before a flame takes shape. Once a few awaken, others begin to feel it. Once a few remember, Others begin to recall what was buried within them. Once a few return, the path home becomes visible to many. Convergence is not the end. It is the moment just before the end becomes visible. And that moment is happening now. Every major act of God in Scripture begins in silence. Before the waters of the Red Sea parted, there was a moment where nothing moved. Before Elijah heard the voice on the mountain, there was the sound of nothing. Before Jesus rose, the world held its breath in a stillness that felt like absence, but was actually preparation. Silence is never empty. It is the room God clears before He speaks. We are in that kind of silence now, not the silence of peace, the silence of alignment. Israel is awakening from within. The West is searching for what it lost. The temple is prepared in everything but stone. The systems of the world are forming a single shape, and a generation is beginning to remember who they are. None of this would mean anything if it were happening independently, but it is happening together. At the same time, with the same undertone, the same direction, the same pull. The world has not yet recognized it. It is too quiet, too subtle, too internal. But this is how God works before He moves openly. There is always a stirring, then a gathering, then a dividing, then a revealing. What we are seeing right now is the stirring, not the storm, not the trumpet, not the fire, the stirring, the moment where the soul wakes before the world does, the moment where identity returns before events unfold, the moment where God calls, and those who belong to Him begin to hear. This does not mean the time has arrived. It means the time is approaching, and the ones who sense it are not the powerful, not the influential, not the loud. They are the ones who feel the weight of the world shifting, even when nothing outward has changed yet. There is a silence before the trumpet, a silence before the unveiling, a silence before the world understands what has already begun. We are living inside that silence, not to fear it, not to escape it, but to recognize it. Because when the silence breaks, the world will not look the same, and those who awakened before the trumpet will know why it sounded. Most people watch the wrong horizon. There is a pattern in how the end is imagined. Eyes turn to power and glitter, to skylines and trading floors, to places that speak loudly. When talk rises about the first city to fall, the common map points elsewhere. A single chapter fuels much of that map. Revelation speaks of Babylon with language that shakes the mind. Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen. Revelation 18:2. A double blow, a final collapse. Leaders watch from a distance. Smoke rises. Wealth vanishes in an hour. The picture is severe. It stays with people. That picture, however, belongs to the end of the sequence. It is a late strike, not the first. Scripture's own order places Babylon's ruin near the closing minutes. In 1 hour is thy judgment come. Revelation 18:10. Sudden terminal. No occupation. No long siege. Not 42 months of trampling. 1 hour. And silence. If the last fall is read as the first sign, attention moves off the line. The early warning is missed. The first city to be seized is not the one burned in an instant. It is the city bound to covenant, altar, and name. A city chosen long before empires were born. A city that has never left the center of the story. The path to clarity begins with simple facts in the text. The key events gather around a holy place. Sacrifice begins, then is halted. An image is set up. Flight is commanded, not later, but immediately. The stage named for these movements is not Rome, not New York, not any modern capital that trades the seas. The stage belongs to the land that the prophets called Judea, and to the hill that has carried prayer for millennia. This is not about spectacle. It is about sequence. A covenant is confirmed. Peace appears to hold. Midway, the mask is dropped. The altar is stopped. The image stands. The command to flee is sharp and urgent. The clock turns, not by rumor, but by days counted in the text. 42 months, 1,260 days. The holy city shall they tread underfoot, 42 months. Revelation 11:2. Why this city? The answer is older than the towers that now claim the sky. It rests in a choice that did not come from politics or geography. For the Lord hath chosen Zion. Psalm 132, verse 13. The place bears a name placed upon it, desire set there, dwelling promised there. To strike it is to strike what God called his own. That is why it is hunted. That is why history returns to it again and again. The story that follows will not chase headlines. It will follow the line that Scripture draws, from warning to breach to 42 months of rule, from the misuse of a holy place to the fall of a global system, to a return that levels every throne. Hold the simple thread. The first city to fall is not the last city to burn. The difference matters. It orders the days. It frames the watch. The next step begins where the warning was first spoken. A hillside, a view of a temple, a command that still stands. The warning from Jesus. From a hillside east of the city, a view opens across the valley. Stone walls, temple courts, the mount called Olives. It is there that the warning is spoken, not to crowds, not to rulers, but to a handful of disciples asking about the end. They wanted to know the sequence. When would the world reach its breaking point? What signs would mark his return? The answer did not come as speculation. It came as command. When you see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, then let those who are in Judea flee into the mountains. Matthew 24, 15-16. The words are clear, not poetry, not symbol, instruction. The holy place was visible from where he sat. The temple stood in full sight. White stone, gold plating, smoke rising from sacrifices, that was the heart of it, the center of worship, the dwelling of the name. And the command was not for distant lands, it was local. Those in Judea, those in the hills and valleys surrounding the city, those who lived within reach of what was about to unfold. No other place is mentioned, not Rome, not Babylon, not Egypt, only this one. The geography fixes the prophecy. The stage is Jerusalem. Then comes the urgency. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. Pray that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath. Matthew 24, 17-20. Each line sharpens the sense of immediacy. No hesitation, no packing, no reasoning. Just flee, because delay would mean death. The detail matters. The order begins in the middle, not at the end. 3.5 years of false peace collapse into terror. Those who once worshipped freely are hunted. Those who refuse to bow are executed. The shift is swift, from covenant to conquest, from offering to abomination. The warning is not symbolic, it is logistical. It speaks to real people in real terrain: roof, field, gate, mountain. In those few verses, Jesus outlines the beginning of the darkest half of the 7-year span that Daniel described. It is not yet Armageddon. It is not the fall of Babylon. It is the moment Jerusalem falls, not in ruins, but in occupation. The image of desolation is more than a statue. It is a claim to divinity, a counterfeit enthronement, the ultimate inversion, a created being demanding worship in the house of the Creator. That is why the command is so urgent. Because remaining in the city after that moment means submission or death. Because the seat of worship has become the seat of the beast. The warning still echoes from that hillside. It is not a message for the curious. It is a marker in time, a precise coordinate in prophecy. Jerusalem, the holy place, the point where covenant breaks and persecution begins. The first city to fall under the beast is the same city once visited by glory, and it is that contrast, sacred chosen ground turned into a throne of blasphemy, that defines the next stage of the story. The covenant and the break prophecy often begins in peace, not the kind born of righteousness, but of illusion. A covenant is signed, an agreement that seems to secure stability. For Israel, it will look like the long-awaited guarantee, recognition, protection, the right to worship again on the mountain once forbidden. He shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. Daniel 9:27. 1 week, 7 years, but halfway through, the mask will fall. For 3.5 years, the arrangement holds. The world celebrates a mediator who brings calm to a region known for conflict. News outlets will speak of historic diplomacy. Pilgrims will gather in joy. Sacrifices will resume just as the prophets foretold. Yet Scripture never calls this peace blessed. It calls it temporary. In the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the offering to cease. The peace treaty becomes a trap. The altar, restored with hope, is silenced by command. At that midpoint, day 1260 of the 7-year count, the Antichrist breaks the covenant. He enters the temple itself. He sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. 2 Thessalonians 2:4. The act is not political. It is spiritual rebellion made visible. He halts worship not because he rejects religion, but because he demands it. Directed toward himself, an image is raised in the holy place. The abomination of desolation takes form. Words are not enough. He must occupy the space where glory once dwelt. That single moment divides time. Before it, false order, economic growth, promises of unity. After it, persecution, famine, and the tightening mark of control. Jerusalem becomes more than a city. It becomes a stage for blasphemy. The covenant that once seemed to protect Israel becomes the door through which the beast walks into its heart. The pattern is ancient. Each deception begins with trust. Pharaoh hardened his heart after giving permission. Antiochus offered alliance before defiling the altar. History repeats with precision because the spirit behind it has not changed. The Scripture speaks in numbers, 42 months, 1,260 days, but the weight is measured in souls. Those days will divide the faithful from the deceived. Some will flee, remembering the words spoken on the Mount of Olives. Others will stay, believing the peace can still hold. But prophecy leaves no ambiguity. Once the sacrifices stop, the countdown begins. The desecration marks the halfway point. The rise of the beast's open rule Jerusalem, once the symbol of God's dwelling, becomes the seat of a counterfeit throne. This is the moment Jesus warned about. When you see the abomination, flee. Not a metaphor, not an idea. A visible event in a visible place. From this act forward, time moves differently. The first half of the 7 years was preparation. The second half is revelation of power, control, and persecution unmatched since the beginning of the world. The covenant's collapse exposes its architect peace, was never his goal. Worship was. And now he has it, through fear, image, and decree. The warning from the Mount becomes history's reality. Jerusalem, the chosen city, is seized not by conquest, but by betrayal. The altar is silent. The covenant is broken. And the second half of prophecy begins, 42 months under the shadow of the throne, in the midst of the week. The phrase is simple, but its weight divides eras. Because the peace that begins the tribulation will not end with signatures, it will end with desecration. Peace is never what it seems when it's signed in haste. Why Jerusalem? The city God chose. Every kingdom has a capital. Every ruler seeks a throne. The Antichrist will do the same. But the question is not where he can rule. It is where he must rule. Why Jerusalem? Why not Rome, the city of empires? Why not Babylon, the city of trade? Why not a neutral capital that offends no one? Because the battle has never been about territory. It has always been about ownership. For the Lord hath chosen Zion. He hath desired it for his habitation. This is my rest forever. Here will I dwell, for I have desired it. Psalm 132, 13-14. Jerusalem is the only city God ever called his own, not because it was mighty or wealthy or defensible, but because he desired it. It is the city where his name was placed, the city where his presence once dwelt. The ark rested there. The Shekinah filled its temple. His glory made it different from every other place on earth. That divine choice made Jerusalem both sacred and contested. What God claims, Satan covets. He does not build, he corrupts. He does not create, he imitates. From the beginning, his rebellion was built on imitation. I will ascend, I will sit, I will be like the Most High. Isaiah 14:13-14. If God's throne was to rest in Jerusalem, then Satan's counterfeit must rise in the same place. To defile that city is the highest form of blasphemy. To sit where God once dwelt is to declare, I have taken what was yours. That is why the Antichrist does not choose Babylon. Babylon represents the world's economy, its pride, its seduction. But Jerusalem represents something infinitely greater, divine ownership. To seize it is not just conquest, it is desecration. It is a throne stolen in daylight. History has previewed this pattern again and again. Antiochus Epiphanes entered the temple, slaughtered swine upon the altar, and erected an image of Zeus. Titus, commander of Rome, tore the temple apart. Stone by stone, Islamic rulers built their shrines upon its ruins. Empires changed, faiths rose and fell, but the battlefield remained the same. Jerusalem always Jerusalem. Each invasion was not only political, it was spiritual rehearsal, a shadow of the final act yet to come. And even now, though divided and rebuilt, though surrounded by walls and watched by cameras, the tension endures. No peace agreement can erase what the prophets wrote. The city remains what it has always been, chosen, rejected, restored, and contested again. The Antichrist will understand that better than most. He will not aim to destroy Jerusalem at once. He will aim to possess it. To sit in its temple is to announce victory over its God. To rule from its hill is to declare himself divine before the nations. That is why Revelation calls it the holy city trampled underfoot for 42 months. Revelation 11:2. It is trampled not because it loses value, but because it holds it. The beast will turn God's chosen hill into his throne room, the same mountain where Abraham once lifted a knife, where David built an altar, where Solomon raised the first temple, and where Christ himself was condemned. Every covenant ever written converges on that ground. The meaning is simple. Jerusalem is the center of history because it is the meeting point of heaven and earth. It is the only place both God and Satan have claimed as home. That is why the war cannot end anywhere else. And that is why it begins there, with the desecration of what is holy, the occupation of what was promised, the corruption of what was pure. Yet the choice of God does not expire. The covenant written over Jerusalem stands unbroken. Even in its darkest hour, the same hill that sees blasphemy will see glory. Because what God has chosen cannot remain defiled forever, and what was called his dwelling will again hear his voice. The 42-month reign time becomes measurement when prophecy turns to precision. The rule of the beast is not endless, it is numbered. The book of Revelation repeats it 4 times, each with the same span, each describing the same season. The holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. Revelation 11:2. 42 months. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days. Revelation 11:3. 1,260 days. The woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Revelation 12:6. And again, a time, and times, and half a time. Revelation 12:14. Each phrase counts the same period, 3.5 years. Each describes a different angle of the same moment Jerusalem trampled. Witnesses speaking, Israel fleeing, the beast ruling. It begins at the midpoint of the 7-year covenant, day 1,260. The peace collapses, and what follows is not chaos without structure, but order under tyranny. The Antichrist takes his seat, and the countdown begins. The city does not fall in fire yet. It falls in control. Military presence expands. Religious life is replaced by worship of the image. Commerce becomes conditioned by a mark. Freedom, once subtle, is gone. The text names the duration because God defines the limit. 42 months, no more. The beast may speak great things and blasphemies, but he cannot extend his own time. His rule is permitted, not permanent. During these months, 2 witnesses stand in Jerusalem. Clothed in sackcloth, they speak against the false peace, warning of judgment. No force silences them until the appointed end. When their words are finished, the beast kills them. Their bodies lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. Revelation 11:8. That line removes all doubt. The place of crucifixion is Jerusalem. The same ground now occupied becomes the stage for defiance. Yet even in those days, the witnesses are not defeated. They rise after 3.5 days, ascending as the world watches. It is a brief light inside a long shadow, a sign that the end of darkness has already been written. Meanwhile, the woman, symbol of Israel, flees into the wilderness protected, hidden, sustained. While the city suffers, the covenant people are preserved by mercy, not by might. The contrast is deliberate. One part trampled, one part sheltered for the nations. Those 42 months mark domination. For heaven, they mark restraint. The Antichrist rules, but only within what has been allowed. Every prophecy written in Numbers carries this quiet assurance. There is an end. Even desecration has a boundary. From the throne of the beast, decrees will spread across the world, idolatry will become law. Refusal will mean death. The mark, a token of allegiance, will control trade, travel, and survival. No one will buy or sell without it. Revelation 13:16-17. But the command of heaven remains unchanged. 42 months. a finite reign, a fixed season of blasphemy. And while the world counts currency, heaven counts days. When those months end, the system collapses from within. The empire built on deception turns on itself. The very kings that empowered the beast destroy the city that sustained him. Babylon burns, Jerusalem waits. Its stones still silent under foreign boots, its altars cold, its prayers halted. But the number is almost spent. When prophecy measures in months, it measures mercy, because time in God's hand is not chaos, it is precision. And the same voice that numbered the stars has also numbered the days of the beast, the fall of Babylon and the end of the beast. The world's gaze shifts from the city of God to the city of men. The reign that began in Jerusalem does not end there. While the holy city lies under occupation, another city thrives. Babylon, the symbol of wealth, luxury, and deception, rises as the center of the beast's world. It is not the Babylon of bricks and ruins on the Euphrates. It is the system, political, economic, and spiritual, that binds the nations. It is the city of influence, not faith. The throne of seduction, not worship. Revelation speaks of her in solemn rhythm. Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils. Revelation 18:2. But her fall comes late, not first. For 42 months she flourishes. While Jerusalem suffers under tyranny, Babylon fuels the machine that keeps it running. The merchants of the earth have grown rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Revelation 18:3. Trade continues. Ships move. Gold flows. The beast's mark controls the exchange, but Babylon's network carries it. Religion mixes with commerce. False faith merges with greed. Jerusalem is the throne. Babylon is the engine. One represents power, the other sustains it. Both are corrupt, but their fates differ in timing. The end of Babylon is written in a single sentence. For in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Revelation 18:10. 1 hour? No warning. No siege. The kings who once adored her now destroy her. The 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and burn her with fire. Revelation 17:16. Even the allies of evil turn against their source, because the same God who limits the beast also ordains his collapse. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will. Revelation 17:17. As the city burns, the merchants cry out, the system that promised endless prosperity ends in smoke. The world mourns its loss because it never understood its nature. It was never about wealth, it was about worship. And when false worship fails, the foundation breaks. The fall of Babylon signals the unraveling of everything the beast built. Without trade, his empire starves. Without deception, his image cracks. His throne in Jerusalem remains, but it stands on empty power. The world system dies before the ruler does. Then the focus shifts again, from the city of merchants to the city of prophecy. The armies gather. The sky opens. And I saw heaven opened, and behold a white horse. And he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. Revelation 19:11. The king returns the beast, and his prophets stand to resist, but have no defense. They are captured, not slain. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone. Revelation 19:20. No trial, no appeal, no escape. In 1 hour, Babylon falls. In 1 moment, the beast is gone. The system collapses. The ruler is judged. And the city he once trampled, Jerusalem, waits in silence. Smoke still rises in the distance. But the measure of time has changed. 42 months have ended. The throne of blasphemy is empty. The stage is cleared for the return of the rightful king. The city that falls will rise again. Silence will follow the fall. Smoke will drift where the false throne once stood. But prophecy does not end in ruin. It ends in restoration. The same city that was trampled becomes the place where the feet of the Redeemer will stand. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. Zechariah 14:4. The mountain splits in two. A valley opens, not as a wound, but as a passage. The armies gathered against Jerusalem scatter in confusion. The sound of blasphemy ends in a single command: silence. The Lord shall go forth and fight against those nations. Zechariah 14:3. The beast is gone. The false prophet is gone. Jerusalem, once under siege, becomes the center of victory. Revelation describes it with final clarity. The beast was taken, and with him the false prophet. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. Revelation 19:20. The occupation ends not by revolt, but by return. The same place where the covenant was broken becomes the ground of fulfillment. The same temple desecrated by the image becomes the place of divine reign. The prophets saw it long before John recorded it. It shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and all nations shall flow unto it. Isaiah 2:2. No longer a city divided by walls and faiths, no longer the object of dispute. Jerusalem becomes the capital of peace, the place from which law and truth proceed. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Isaiah 2:3. This is not poetic, it is governmental. The king rules from the city once defiled. Every kingdom and every people answer to his word. The transformation is not partial, it is total. Thus saith the Lord, I am returned unto Zion, and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem shall be called a city of truth. Zechariah 8:3. Truth replaces deception, light replaces fire. Presence replaces absence. The mountain that once saw idols will see his throne. The air that once carried the cries of the persecuted will carry songs of the redeemed. The ground that drank blood will yield peace. The reign lasts 1,000 years. The millennial kingdom, not myth, but sequence. Jerusalem, restored, becomes the center of earth's renewal. The covenant is no longer broken. It is complete. The promise to Abraham, David, and every prophet before them converges in one city made new by glory. Yet even that is not the end. Because when time itself dissolves, the name of the city remains. John writes, I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven. Revelation 21:2. The first Jerusalem was chosen. The second was conquered. The final descends, untouched by war, formed by the hand of God. There is no temple there, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple of it. Revelation 21:22. No separation, no veil. The presence that once filled the Holy of Holies now fills everything. The story closes where it began, with a city and a throne. But this time, the throne is eternal, and the city, once scarred, becomes the mirror of heaven itself. Two names remain in contrast. Babylon, the city of man, ends in smoke, never to rise Jerusalem. The city of God rises from ashes into everlasting light. And there shall be one king over all the earth. In that day shall there be one Lord, and his name one. Zechariah 14:9. The difference is final. One city is erased. One city endures. The city that fell first will rise highest. The city that was trampled will become the city of truth, and in that city time will no longer be counted, because eternity will have begun.
What on earth was going on?
It's on the news, in headlines, on every major network across America. But no one can explain it. No one can agree on what it means. Across the United States, people are looking up and capturing the same mysterious sight. Glowing spheres drifting through the night sky. Changing direction as if guided by intelligence. In one clip, the light plummets toward the horizon, only to shoot back upward in a flash. In another, a formation of bright orbs hovers silently, then vanishes as if swallowed by the clouds. Reporters call them UAPs. Scientists call them plasma events. But witnesses describe something else entirely, a presence. And it isn't just America. From South America to the Middle East, from the frozen north of Scandinavia to the deserts of Egypt, strange lights have appeared above cities, deserts, and oceans. Some say they've heard low, trumpet-like sounds echoing from the skies. Others report rivers turning red and swarms of locusts darkening the horizon. It's as if the natural world itself is reacting, trembling, to something unseen. These events are not isolated. They are multiplying, and with each passing month, they grow harder to dismiss. The question is no longer, are they real? Even the news anchors admit they are. The real question is, what are we witnessing? Because while governments debate radar data and weather models, those who read the ancient prophecies recognize a familiar pattern. There will be signs in the heavens above and on the earth below. What if the sky isn't warning us of invaders, but of something far greater? Something written long before satellites, before science. A message that the heavens themselves would one day deliver. As lights appear and waters turn crimson, a silent question echoes across the earth. Are these coincidences? Or is heaven trying to speak? The mysterious lights above. What began as a few isolated sightings has now become a national conversation. From New York to California, from the quiet suburbs of Minnesota to the coastal skies of Florida. Americans are witnessing something that defies explanation. On a calm evening, a family in Massachusetts films what they think is a meteor, until it suddenly stops mid-air, glows brighter, and darts away against the wind. In Minnesota, a father and son scanning the night for meteor showers see a white orb surrounded by a faint halo, as if a light is wrapped inside a living cloud. And along the Florida coast, fishermen describe glowing objects rising from the ocean, moving silently through the sky, then diving back beneath the water's surface. These are not stories from anonymous internet forums. They're verified reports featured on Fox News, Newsweek, and the New York Post. Pilots have filed flight logs describing intelligent motion that radar cannot track. Some military analysts claim it could be new surveillance technology. Others whisper about something entirely different, something that watches back. Even the Pentagon's UAP task force, after years of silence, admits that over 100 encounters remain unexplained. The data shows physical craft, not illusions. They appear, vanish, and accelerate beyond anything known to human technology. Scientists offer their theories. Maybe it's atmospheric plasma, electrical discharges trapped between magnetic fields. Maybe it's experimental aircraft. Maybe it's just weather. But none of these explanations account for the patterns, the timing, the precision. Whatever these objects are, they don't behave like accidents of nature. And perhaps that's the point. Because while the world races to define them, Scripture has already described such moments, times when heaven and earth intersect. The prophet Ezekiel spoke of a whirlwind coming out of the north and a great cloud with fire flashing continually. With creatures that moved wherever the Spirit would go, Ezekiel 1:4-12. To ancient eyes, it was a vision of glory. To modern cameras, it looks like light, spinning, intelligent, unearthly. So the question isn't only what we're seeing, but why now? Each generation has watched the skies, from the Star of Bethlehem to the comets of the Middle Ages. Yet what makes this moment different is the frequency and the timing. At a point in history when moral lines blur, wars ignite, and the earth itself groans under pressure, the heavens begin to stir. Astronomers track the patterns, but theologians see something deeper. A spiritual tension, as if two realms are drawing closer. The Bible calls them the heavens, plural, hinting that reality is layered, not flat. Paul wrote in Ephesians 6:12, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and powers of the air." That phrase, powers of the air, takes on a haunting clarity when the sky itself begins to move. Is it possible that what we call unidentified are not visitors from another planet, but messengers or warnings from another dimension entirely? Could these lights be signs of the spiritual conflict Scripture has spoken of for millennia? Notice how every report carries the same undertone: silence, awe, a presence that unsettles the soul. Even those who don't believe in God confess they felt something, a strange mix of wonder and dread, as if creation itself was revealing a truth we've long ignored. Because sometimes heaven doesn't speak in words. It speaks in fire, it speaks in movement, it speaks in silence. And as these lights sweep across the world, from the coasts of America to the deserts of Israel, the same thought echoes: this isn't just science. It feels like prophecy. Governments will analyze, scientists will debate, and skeptics will mock. But the pattern remains. Every few weeks, new footage emerges. Every few weeks, another eyewitness looks up and can no longer deny what they see. Something, or someone, is allowing the veil to thin. And the skies, once quiet, now tremble with a message older than civilization itself. As one reporter in disbelief murmured while the camera kept rolling, "It's almost like the sky knows what it's doing." Maybe it does. Because perhaps these are not the days when heaven hides its face, but the days when it begins to reveal it. And if the sky itself is no longer silent, what might the earth say next? If the heavens are stirring, the earth is answering. From the waters of Israel to the deserts of Africa, creation itself seems to be echoing something ancient, a pattern that has unfolded before. In recent months, fishermen along the shores of the Sea of Galilee noticed something impossible to ignore. The water had turned a deep, blood-red hue. Scientists quickly pointed to a natural cause: a sudden bloom of red algae. They said it was harmless, temporary, nothing to fear. But for those who know the Scriptures, the image felt hauntingly familiar. Because once, long ago, in the land of Egypt, the river also turned to blood. Exodus 7:20 records, "Moses lifted the staff, and all the waters of the river were turned to blood." It was not just judgment, it was a message, a warning that the natural order was trembling before the divine. So, could this transformation in Galilee, the very sea where Jesus once walked, be symbolic of something greater? Scientists see biology. Believers see prophecy. two worlds observing the same water, but through different eyes. And it isn't the only disturbance. Across vast stretches of Africa and the Middle East, farmers wake to skies darkened by billions of locusts. They swarm like living storms, devouring everything in their path. Meteorologists blame heavy rains, perfect breeding conditions, a climate anomaly, they say. Yet the book of Joel calls it something else entirely. A nation has invaded my land, powerful and beyond number. Before them, the land is like Eden. Behind them, a desolate wilderness. In ancient prophecy, locusts were not mere insects. They were instruments, agents of warning, a mirror reflecting the spiritual decay of a people who had forgotten their Creator. Now, centuries later, the same pattern unfolds again, as if nature remembers what humanity has chosen to forget. But perhaps the most unsettling signs are not seen, but heard. From Jerusalem to distant cities across the globe, countless videos have captured deep metallic sounds reverberating through the sky. They are not thunder, not aircraft. They come without lightning, without wind, an invisible trumpet echoing from the clouds. Those who hear it describe a vibration that seems to shake not only the air, but the soul. Acousticians suggest it could be sky quakes, pressure waves trapped in the upper atmosphere, or the resonance of shifting magnetic fields. But once again, the pattern matches prophecy. Revelation 8 speaks of 7 trumpets that would sound before the end of the age, each heralding a new stage in humanity's reckoning. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Maybe what we're hearing isn't the literal trumpet of heaven, not yet, but an echo, a prelude, a reminder, because the Bible says creation itself groans in travail, waiting for redemption. Romans 8:22. So what if these sounds, this trembling of the atmosphere, are creation's cry? Think of it. The sea turns red, the air hums like a warning bell, the earth moves beneath our feet. These are not random catastrophes scattered across continents. They form a melody, a harmony between heaven and earth, a chorus of signs. And when we view them together, lights in the sky, rivers turning crimson, swarms blotting out the sun, and trumpets echoing from the clouds, a picture begins to emerge. It's as though every element of creation, wind, water, fire, and sky, has taken its place in a divine orchestra, each one playing its part in the approaching crescendo. Scientists observe data, prophets discern meaning, and somewhere between those two perspectives lies the truth. We've spent centuries believing the physical and the spiritual are separate worlds. But what if the veil between them is thinning? What if these natural anomalies are not just meteorology or biology, but the language of God, spoken through His creation one final time? For in Luke 19:40, Jesus said, "If they keep silent, the very stones will cry out." And today, it seems the stones, the rivers, and even the sky are doing exactly that. The question now isn't whether these events are real. The cameras have already proved that. The question is, why are they happening together? Because throughout history, whenever heaven moved, earth responded. When the flood came, the ground split open. When Christ was crucified, the rocks themselves broke apart. And now, as prophecy unfolds once more, creation trembles again, not in chaos, but in recognition. It is as if the world itself remembers who made it and senses that He is near. When lights appear in the heavens and the earth trembles beneath, we're left with one question. What is all of this trying to say? Because at first glance, Each phenomenon seems separate, unconnected, accidental. But when you step back and look at the world as a whole, the pattern becomes undeniable. The skies are moving, the seas are changing, and the sounds of the earth seem to echo the words written thousands of years ago. There will be signs in the heavens above and on the earth below, blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. Acts 2:19. These are not just signs of destruction. They are messages of mercy, a warning before the shaking becomes unbearable. Scientists continue to analyze atmospheric vibrations, magnetic anomalies, algal blooms, and yes, they are right to search for answers. But what if they are only studying the instrument and not listening to the music it plays? Every event, whether in the sky, the sea, or the soil, seems to carry the same rhythm, the same pulse. It's the rhythm of a creation groaning for redemption. The Bible calls it birth pains, contractions before something new is born. And birth, by nature, is both beautiful and violent. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. Romans 8:22. This is not random chaos. It's the sound of a world that knows its maker is drawing near. And yet, while the world debates UFOs and red seas, the real danger isn't in the sky or in the earth. It's in the silence of the human heart. Because the greatest blindness is not failing to see the signs, but seeing them, and refusing to believe what they mean. In every age, God has spoken through creation: thunder, wind, flame, storm. But now, as these signs multiply, He speaks one last message. Wake up. I am near, not to terrify, but to invite. Not to condemn, but to prepare. When Jesus rebuked the Pharisees, He said, "You know how to read the sky and predict the weather, but you cannot discern the signs of the times." Matthew 16:3. We've mastered the science of the atmosphere, but forgotten the language of heaven. Maybe these lights and sounds are not warnings of alien invasion, but invitations to look higher. Maybe the red waters and locust storms are not punishments, but reflections, mirrors of what we've become. Humanity has learned to decode the stars, to send rockets beyond the moon, yet struggles to lift its eyes to the one who made the stars. And so, creation itself begins to preach. It speaks in the only way it can, through disruption, through awe, through beauty and fear woven together. Because even in its shaking, the world is still declaring, He is coming. Every flash in the sky, every trembling in the earth, every trumpet in the clouds. They're not just news events, they're rehearsals, signals that history is moving toward a divine appointment. And just as the sky once split open for the flood, and again for the resurrection, so it will open once more, not in mystery, but in revelation. These are not the days of silence. These are the days of awakening. The heavens have spoken. The earth has answered. Now, the question is, will humanity listen? The silence before the final trumpet. There's a moment in every story, right before the storm breaks. A stillness so deep, it feels like the world is holding its breath. That's where we are now, between the signs and the silence, between what has been revealed and what's about to unfold. The heavens have spoken, through lights that move with intelligence, through clouds that thunder without rain. The earth has answered, with waters turned crimson, with locusts that devour fields, with sounds that echo like a warning from another realm. And now,